Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Wednesday, June 9th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi, and we begin with some breaking news. A wildfire in the North County. It's a 1,000-acre fire on the base of Camp Pendleton that is prompting mandatory evacuations of some military facilities. A tweet from the base says the fire department there is attempting to contain the fire. And the smoke can be seen for miles, as you can see from this SDG&E Alert wildfire camera. The fire is in the Lake O'Neill campground, and an evacuation center is located at Page Fieldhouse. There's no word of any structures burned or injuries. Base crews had been conducting controlled burns this week, but no word if this fire is related. It's a first for San Diego County that no one wanted to see. A woman who'd been vaccinated against COVID-19 died of the disease this week, a so-called breakthrough case. KPBS reporter John Carroll says the death is exceedingly rare when viewed against the overall effectiveness of the vaccines.
There's been so much good news surrounding COVID lately. San Diego County coming close to the goal of getting 75% of people here vaccinated, advancing to the yellow, least restrictive tier. But now, news from the county that a 70-year-old woman, who they say had many underlying health conditions, died of the virus despite being vaccinated. Dr. Christian Ramers is an infectious disease specialist with Family Health Centers of San Diego.
Well, I mean, you have to acknowledge that it's true. It did happen. This is what we call a breakthrough case.
A breakthrough case, a situation where even with the vaccine, the virus overcomes the body's ability to fight it off. But to say these cases are exceedingly rare is a big understatement.
So in the CDC's tracking database, 3,000 cases of breakthrough cases out of 135 million people vaccinated. So that's a 0.002% rate of hospitalization and a 0.0004% risk of death.
In other words, for people still hesitant to get the vaccine, this one breakthrough case is not a reason not to get vaccinated.
Scientifically and medically, it is the best tool that we have by far at getting people protected. We're seeing these incredible falling numbers. It's really because of those that have been vaccinated.
Plus, being vaccinated means the ability to return to doing lots of things without having to wear a mask. And Dr. Ramers says for those still unvaccinated, there's something else to consider.
You will be increasingly asked, maybe it's by your employer, by an airline, by a concert venue, to prove that you're vaccinated. We do this already for so many other diseases.
The bottom line, even with the tragic breakthrough case, there's no reason not to get vaccinated and every reason to get the shot to help society as a whole move back to where we were before any of us had ever heard of COVID-19. John Carroll, KPBS News.
Across the U.S., significant strides are being made in curbing the pandemic. Average daily cases are near a 14-month low, and more than half of eligible Americans have been fully vaccinated. But as Isabel Rosales reports, experts are warning about a new variant and its possible impact.
A plea from top doctor Anthony Fauci on a new variant he sees as a threat to progress against the COVID-19 pandemic.
We cannot declare victory prematurely.
A 1-2 punch for the United Kingdom. First, hit hard by the Alpha variant, and now Delta. Researchers first identified it in India. The Delta variant may be more contagious, cause more severe disease, and spread in younger patients. Fauci says it could spell trouble for the U.S. if it becomes a dominant strain.
We don't want to let happen in the United States what is happening currently in the UK.
6% of new COVID infections in the U.S. are the Delta variant. But the U.S. is still making big strides against the pandemic. Average daily cases are near a 14-month low, and more than half of eligible Americans are fully vaccinated. But health experts warn we're not in the clear.
The Delta variant really is a double threat because it is both more infectious and it can evade our immune responses.
A slowdown in vaccinations leaves unvaccinated Americans vulnerable to variants.
The pandemic is definitely not over for those who are not vaccinated.
While the variant is highly susceptible to 2-dose vaccines, a single dose drops the vaccine's effectiveness to only 33% against symptomatic disease from Delta, according to the UK Public Health Agency. In Washington, Isabel Rosales, KPBS News.
Pfizer's vaccine is currently available to kids 12 and older. Now we're getting a new timeline for when it could be approved for younger children. The controversial issue of mandating masks in the workplace has prompted a hastily called meeting by Cal-OSHA officials tonight. A dozen major business organizations have asked Governor Newsom to change recently adopted workplace regulations requiring all workers to wear masks unless everyone in a room is vaccinated. The group wants an emergency order rescinding the regulations that run counter to Newsom's plan to lift nearly all mask rules for vaccinated people next Tuesday. The Cal-OSHA board could withdraw its new rules, but must give at least 5 days' notice. And this follows mask guidance announced today by the California Health and Human Services Secretary. Starting on June 15th, the state will align with the CDC recommendations, and that means that fully vaccinated people don't have to wear masks except on public transit, airplanes, taxis, as well as indoor K-12 schools and child care settings. Those not vaccinated will have to keep wearing masks in most indoor public settings. Masks are also still required regardless of vaccination status in healthcare settings, correctional facilities, and homeless shelters. Recently, a children's hospital in Colorado declared a state of emergency, citing increasing numbers of youth suffering from mental illness, which includes suicidal thoughts and attempts. KPBS health reporter Matt Hoffman says local experts say they too are seeing surges that can be directly linked to COVID-19.
At this point, over a year into the pandemic, we have data. So we know that the rates of anxiety, depression, and eating disorders, they've all increased.
Dr. Willow Jenkins is a child psychiatrist and the inpatient medical director at Rady Children's Hospital.
Personally, I see children every single day.
She says there has been about a 25% increase in mental health visits to their emergency room.
Could be a variety of things, but to bring a child to the emergency room for a mental health issue, obviously it's something that's pretty acute and pretty severe. So our most common reason is suicide, whether it's the thoughts of suicide or actual action.
Dr. Jenkins says early interventions are key for preventing worse outcomes, and for parents that can be simple as talking to your kids a little bit more, especially if you notice something just isn't quite right.
And I know a lot of parents get kind of nervous or unsure of how to have that conversation. So I always tell families, please ask. If you ask, you're not going to make that child think about it more. It's not going to cause them to act. If anything, you'll get more information and potentially even save their life. This is very, very serious.
Rady Children's has a 24-bed inpatient mental health unit, which has been full, and during the pandemic, a new psychiatric emergency room wing opened up.
One of a few nationwide. It's a 6-bed specialized pediatric psychiatric emergency room. So it's staffed with a child psychiatrist, specialized nursing, social workers. Everything is geared to supporting the mental health of youth.
Jenkins says there are a number of reasons for the increase in visits.
The fears of getting sick. At this point in the pandemic, we've had children that have lost their parents to COVID-19. So there's grief and there's loss. And then there's obviously the indirect effects of the pandemic. So this is relating to school closures, being socially isolated, being away from friends and peers.
She says ongoing racial injustice issues and political tensions are also a factor, plus the stresses of parents who may have lost their jobs.
So warning signs for mental illness in youth. So those usually are if you're seeing your child become more withdrawn, not hanging out with their friends as much, not doing things they enjoy. If they're becoming more irritable, more angry, that's a key sign of depression in children and youth.
Jenkins says one of the most common fears from parents is if they think there's something wrong and they alert doctors, their child will automatically be put on drugs. But she says most mild to moderate cases can be handled with therapy.
Nothing is done without a full evaluation, talking to the family, reviewing all of the options.
San Diego County data shows in 2020 there was not an increase in youth suicides when compared with the previous few years. Anyone in crisis should call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255 or visit their website, suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Governor Newsom ordered state capitol flags be flown at half-staff in honor of two married San Diego Police Department detectives killed in a wrong-way crash. Funeral services for 32-year-old Ryan Park and 33-year-old Jamie Huntley Park are scheduled for June 15th. The couple met at the police academy in 2012 and were promoted to detective together in 2018. In a statement, Governor Newsom said his thoughts go out to their loved ones, their friends, and the law enforcement family. The reckoning on the role of police in society goes beyond city streets. As race and equity reporter Christina Kim shows us, a group gathered in San Diego today to call for the elimination of university police departments.
Don't fall prey to the idea that UCPD is some easier police institution that looks better and nicer than that of San Diego Police Department.
UCSD students and faculty, together with local social justice organizations, say it's time to end police presence on college campuses. Essence Leanne, a third-year UC San Diego student and an organizer with the group UCSD Cops Off Campus, was pulled over by campus police on May 25th. Leanne says she was racially profiled. She still remembers what ran through her head at that moment.
I had an interpersonal dialogue with myself. Don't die, Essence. It was really that simple, and that's what you have to police yourself.
According to the public UCSD police logs, the incident was logged as, quote, suspicious circumstances. In an email statement, a campus spokesperson said Leanne was pulled over for obstructing her license plate and no ticket was issued. The statement went on to say the UC system has been working with stakeholders, including students, to create the Presidential Campus Safety Plan, which will, quote, transform UC's cultures, policy, and practices to achieve a vision of safety in which all members of the community feel further welcome, respected, and protected. The local Cops Off Campus organizers are part of a larger international coalition of groups that want schools to be police-free. They say their movement is rooted in the idea of abolition. UC San Diego professor Simeon Mann says it's a step towards a more just society.
Right, challenging policing on all scales, even interpersonally. So abolishing the police is an entry point to reimagining or rediscovering ways that we can exist in community with one another as we build the world we want to see.
The current UCSD Police Department budget is $13.9 million. The students and faculty gathered today say campus safety can still be achieved if the department is eliminated and those funds are redistributed. Christina Kim, KPBS News.
The family of a San Diego woman who was killed while rioting at the U.S. Capitol is filing a new lawsuit. Ashley Babbitt's family is suing to reveal the identity of the police officer who fatally shot her during the January 6th insurrection. The Justice Department said it would not file criminal charges against that officer, who has not been named. Babbitt's family is also planning to sue the U.S. Capitol Police for $10 million. A Marine general at Camp Pendleton is being relieved of his duties. Officials say Major General Robert F. Castelvi failed to properly train Marines and sailors and evaluate the platoon before a deadly seafaring tank accident off San Clemente Island. The training accident killed 9 troops, making it one of the deadliest for the Marines in recent years. Leaders say it could have been prevented. 80 years after he died in the attack on Pearl Harbor, a Marine from San Diego has finally been laid to rest. Private First Class John Middleswart was buried at Fort Rosecrans National Cemetery yesterday with full military honors. Middleswart was 19 when he was killed, along with more than 400 people aboard the USS Oklahoma. He was identified through DNA, with his surviving family getting the news in February.
When I was 5 years old, I remember him. But after that, he joined the Marine Corps. He was gone. All of a sudden, we have remains. He's home.
It was believed that Middleswart's body was buried among hundreds of other unknowns at the National Cemetery of the Pacific in Oahu. That is until the Defense POW MIA accounting agency began identifying remains through DNA.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, the president makes his first overseas trip to Europe to re-engage with allies and meet with adversaries. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
As COVID-19 cases fall, there's continued concern for unvaccinated children who are not yet eligible to get protected because of their age. But as Mandy Gaither reports, there's a new timeline for when that may change for children as young as 5.
The numbers keep falling. A 94% decrease from COVID-19 cases since January of this year. But the concern continues to rise for children, who now account for about 25% of total COVID-19 cases in the U.S.
Low risk does not mean no risk.
A CDC study examined more than 200 young people between the ages of 12 and 17 who were hospitalized for COVID-19 at the beginning of the year. While there were no deaths, the data showed nearly a third were admitted to intensive care units and roughly 5% had to be ventilated.
As adults get vaccinated and become more protected and immune to this virus, the virus is still in the community looking for a vulnerable host, and pediatric patients fit that description.
Right now, children 12 and older are eligible to get a COVID-19 vaccine. This week, Moderna's CEO said his company's vaccine will likely be available for children as young as 5 in early fall. Thursday, FDA vaccine advisors will meet to discuss whether to authorize COVID-19 vaccines for children 11 and younger.
What I think we're going to do at that meeting is we're going to decide what the parameters are for approval, either through emergency use authorization or for licensure down to for much younger age groups.
For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
Some heard it while others felt it, some both. We're talking about that big boom that happened around 8:15 last night. San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria, among many, took to Twitter saying that he heard it but didn't know what it was. The USGS says it was not an earthquake. However, Camp Pendleton put out a notice on June 3rd saying that high-powered explosive munitions would be fired this week. Well, whatever it was, it got plenty of people's attention.
After a little bit of a cool down for some here late last week, our temperatures are warming up again. We're back on the rise. We'll also see some gusty winds picking up. And unfortunately, there is no rain in sight. In the metro for tonight, temperatures will be dropping off into the low 60s. We'll see some low clouds, and so that means some fog out there possible, especially right along the coast during the early morning hours of your Thursday. Temperatures for tonight in Oceanside dropping off to 52 degrees. San Diego again getting down to 60. Borrego Springs at 60 degrees for you for that overnight low. Vermona getting down into the mid 40s out there. Then looking ahead to Thursday, we're going to see this dip in the jet stream, so this cooler push of air is going to try to come southward. However, Southern California, much of the desert region down here is still going to remain hot, and we're also going to see some, again, really strong winds picking up. It'll likely mostly be out into portions of Nevada here where those winds really get going. But even down into the desert region, I do still think that the winds are going to be a little bit on the strong side here to finish off the rest of the work week. Temperatures for tomorrow in Oceanside getting up to 71. Borrego Springs, you're in the mid 90s. Mount Laguna getting up to 67 degrees for your high on your Thursday afternoon. And the warming trend only continues as we head into your Friday. We'll see the warmth returning to portions that could see a little bit of a cooler day there on Thursday, but overall the pattern definitely does favor warming. Near the coast, temperatures are going to warm up from the low to mid 70s. Over the next couple of days further inland, we're going to make a run at the 90s by Sunday and Monday. So going from the upper 70s on your Thursday to 90s by the end of the weekend. In the mountains, temperatures climbing up from the upper 60s to the low 70s and eventually into the upper 70s by the time we start off your next work week. And that same warming trend is clear as can be in the desert, where we go from the mid 90s on your Thursday to the triple digits for the weekend and heading into next week. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Jessica Pash.
In March, the County Board of Supervisors ordered a review of its COVID-19 hotel sheltering program after reports of mismanagement. But iNewsSource investigative reporter Cody Delaney found county staff missed a June 1 deadline.
County staff gave San Diego State a $140,000 contract to review the troubled hotel program. The report was due in 90 days, but it took more than a month to work out the contract. Now, the June 1st deadline has been pushed back to sometime next month. But people in the program with nowhere else to go say something needs to change. Naomi Flynn says she spent about 5 months at one of the county-run COVID hotels, but was kicked out after an altercation. She's now living in her SUV. She blames the company the county hired to run the program for the problems.
Their staff are not qualified to deal with people with PTSD or anything like that. They're more qualified to deal with children because that's how they treated all of us.
At a news conference this week, Board of Supervisors Chairman Nathan Fletcher explained why he went along with delaying the review of the program.
We would rather wait a few weeks to get a complete and accurate report than rush something that might be inaccurate and incomplete. And so I think given the seriousness of the issue, it is appropriate and fine for us to give them a little additional time to make sure we have a complete report.
For KPBS, I'm iNews Source investigative reporter Cody Dulaney.
iNews Source is an independently funded nonprofit partner of KPBS. Mutual aid groups run by volunteers having sprung up across San Diego County to fill in where social services fall short. Race and equity reporter Christina Kim tells us how one local group is working to feed the homeless.
It's 6 a.m. Sunday, and Athena Bazalaki and her boyfriend Fernando Tabor are already brewing a second giant carafe of coffee and assembling over 40 sandwiches. As music plays in the background, Bazalaki dances around the kitchen, but she moves with the methodical purpose of someone that's done this routine a few times. She's the founder of Breakfast Block, a mutual aid volunteer-run group that provides hot meals, tents, clothing, and anything else people donate to San Diego's unsheltered population. This is her 10th event. Bazalaki says mutual aid, which has become increasingly popular during the pandemic, is a simple concept rooted in community.
I mean, it's for all of us, because the idea is if you needed help, I'm going to help you. And then if I need help, you're going to help me. And that's just how it works.
Bazalaki first came up with the idea for Breakfast Block in February, after seeing a video showing a group of San Diego police officers surrounding a homeless woman. One officer pointed a gun at her. In that moment, something clicked.
I realized that I have definitely been guilty of looking past unsheltered people, feeling guilty about what I have, feeling guilty that I'm not doing enough, but obviously not enough to be mobile, to mobilize myself, you know? But this time I was like, you know what, let's do this.
It started off small, with a few people providing leftover food, but it's grown a lot. Someone recently donated a fridge and even storage space. Once Bazalaki finishes making the last carafe of coffee, she and Tabor load up the truck and fetch the remaining goods from the storage space. By 8 a.m., Bazalaki and over 20 volunteers are unloading 2 pickup trucks full of items. They set up on the bridge at the intersection of 17th and Island, over the constant din of the I-5. When they arrive, there's already a line of people eager to see them, including Terry Young, who helps them unload boxes from the truck. Young has been unsheltered for 2 years. He came early to help out and to grab some food and socks. He says Breakfast Block feels like community.
It feels pretty comfortable. You know, people are really friendly. It's like family in a sense. You know, where they come towards people and, you know, pretty professional.
The number of people that entered homelessness for the first time doubled last year in San Diego County. Edward Pulliam says he lost his home in Imperial Beach shortly after moving there in 2019. He lives in his car, and his daughter, Shaylin, age 5, lives in a shelter run by Father Joe's Village.
We just trying to get a place, you know, in California, going through it like everybody else.
Finding a home is especially hard in San Diego, where the median home price rose to over $800,000 this past April. And the rental market is equally tough, with more than 130,000 low-income renters locked out of affordable housing. Pulliam came to Breakfast Block to get some food and slacks for his job as a security guard. Shaylin, to her glee, was given a floral headband that a volunteer gave her. The atmosphere is joyful. At one point, Bazalaki drives around the area with a megaphone in hand to let people know Breakfast Block is happening.
Breakfast Block! Free food and drinks! Free food and drinks! 17th and Island!
Emily D'Amico has been volunteering with Breakfast Block for months. She was drawn to the concept of mutual aid.
Solidarity, not charity.
is one of the things about it. You know, we're not out here helping the less fortunate. We're out here uplifting our community. And we know we want to better our community.
D'Amico credits the pandemic and last summer's protest with her decision to take action. As a Black woman and mother to 2 Black sons, Bazelaki is also deeply involved in the racial justice movement.
Power, power, power to the people!
She was on the front lines of the local protests last year following the police violence that killed George Floyd and Breonna Taylor.
I felt like I was at my wit's end, and the only way to kind of express myself was to get out and protest in the streets.
She sees Breakfast Block as an extension of her racial justice work.
You know, the fact that it's disproportionately people of color, it's like, you know, there's something there. There are things that are adding up, and these systems were put in place on purpose.
Decades of racist policies like redlining, over-policing, pay discrimination, and unequal access to credit have made Black Americans more vulnerable to housing insecurity. 1 in 3 homeless people in San Diego are Black, even though Black people only make up 5.5% of the general population. Bazelaki sees these struggles as interconnected.
It's not an individual issue. None of these issues are individual issues. These are community problems.
By 10:30 a.m., it's time to wrap up. But Breakfast Block will be back in a couple of weeks, trying to make San Diego a more just place, 1 cup of coffee at a time. Christina Kim, KPBS News.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.